So for those that are not really deep in energy security, you mentioned cybersecurity. Can you kind of give us in very layman terms what EverLine does?
When we think about energy security, we're looking at really two pieces of that, which is IT, the backbone of the business, but then OT, operational technology. Those systems, they are highly attractive targets to adversaries. If you can get control of an OT system, you often can create a safety incident or something that's fairly widespread. Many customers come to us, they don't know what they need. So we're trying to say, here's the problem, and let us help you navigate what the solution can be.
After rolling up 7 companies into one, what has been harder than expected? Was it more on the people side, the processes, sales, marketing operations?
That's a great question. I think
Welcome to the HEX-Files. Today's guest is Annie McIntyre, a leader in energy security and critical infrastructure. She founded Arnaud Strategies and now helps lead EverLine, where the team focuses on asset data capture, verification, and compliance across some of the most complex energy environments out there. Annie has spent over 20 years working across federal programs, operational technology, and now PE-backed growth, which gives her a very real operator's perspective on scaling trust-based businesses in high-risk industries. Today, we'll talk about the challenges being that growth from evolving security threat and referral-driven sales to integration after M&A and the role of technology. Hello, Annie. How are you doing today?
good morning. I'm doing well. How are you, sir?
Good. Ready to start a new year, 2026.
Yes.
So today, Annie, we're going to talk a little bit about you, your background, and kind of your marketing sales challenges. To start, can you walk us through kind of your background and how you found your way into kind of energy security?
Absolutely. Absolutely. My first job out of college was on the Human Genome Project through a contractor, and that was DOE funded. And then shortly after that, went to work in the Department of Defense sector. My background was in military systems. I worked for the Department of the Army. That was a very busy time for the defense sector. And then I moved to Sandia National Labs. And when I moved, my clearance, my Department of Defense clearance, did not translate to the national nuclear clearance that I needed. So while I was waiting for the new clearance to come in, folks at Sandia said, would you like to take a look at some oil and gas security projects that we had? The rest was history. I was hooked. That was right after 9/11, and the new infrastructure sectors. It was a struggle to try to figure out how we were going to secure those, how we were going to approach the threat, approach risk. And so, DHS was fairly new, those sectors and their identifications and the risks to them were fairly new. So it was a very exciting time to be in that space.
So you founded Ardua, and what problem were you trying to solve?
Well, I think when I left Sandia, it was to form Ardua. And at that point in time, specifically the oil and gas sector and the chemical sectors really had the highest amount of threat. And most of those technologies in those sectors for decades had enjoyed the fact that they were somewhat isolated and received security through obscurity. And that was changing. We were moving towards standard technology, standard operating systems, interconnected systems. So very distributed architectures, bringing a whole new level of risk to that. So oil and gas really was the focus for Ardua for about the first 8 or so years of its existence, had it for about 11 years. And we hit a period of time where the regulatory environment was changing, specifically to oil and gas. And we had the Colonial incident, there was a SolarWinds incident, there were some physical security incidents, and all that coming together made 2021 a year of pretty big transition for energy security, because we had pipeline regulations that came out, very aggressive. We had executive orders. So there was this new interest in energy security from a regulatory standpoint, subsectors that had never been regulated before from a security standpoint. So there was a lot of work to be done. That created a flurry of interest in my company. And at that point in time, I thought this would be a good way for us to kind of scale. So Line Star Holding Company purchased my company, Ardua, and formed EverLine. And EverLine is formed out of a collection of smaller energy services companies that had been around for a long time. And the idea was to create that one-stop shop so an asset owner could come get all the services that they need. We have the largest third-party control room in North America, really large compliance and integrity team, security services, and that has grown. So that was about almost 5 years ago, and that space has just exploded. What we've seen since then is that regulations in energy for security are not going away. In fact, they are expanding. So what we have seen in the past year is that, rail cyber regulations in effect, obviously increased in maturity and pipeline regulations, cybersecurity regulations, and now this month, maritime regulations. So security is like safety. It's never going to unwind. When you have a regulatory environment, you have requirements and expectations now from insurers and the federal government and just strategic partners. They have an expectation that you're doing your due diligence in the supply chain. And so energy security is something that is endless in a way, right? We'll always have new threats and we always have to have new mitigations. And that's the space that we're in right now. And it continues to evolve almost on a quarterly basis, to be honest.
So for those, that are not really deep in energy security, you mentioned cybersecurity. We can talk about traditional IT, energy services. Can you kind of give us, in very layman terms, what Everline does in simple terms?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we think about energy security, we're looking at really two pieces of that, which is IT, as you described, the backbone of the business, but then OT, operational technology. Those are all the systems really, doing the processing, doing the automation, doing the controls and all that. It's critical. It is the lifeline of the business. Those systems, we know, right? We have evidence. We know that they are highly attractive targets to adversaries, whether it's, well-funded nation state adversaries, clear down to individual lone wolf adversaries. It's a spectrum of threat, and they're targeting those OT systems because if you can disrupt business, if you can get control of an OT system, you often can create a safety incident or something it's fairly widespread. It can be very dangerous, and if you wanted to disrupt our natural flow of energy in our life here, with the critical infrastructure, one way to do that is to target those OT systems. It's very bespoke for each customer. They have unique architectures, but there is a common theme in how to secure those systems, an approach, a methodology. And so while applying that methodology might be different for each customer, just the idea of solid OT security has been pretty refined over the last 10, 15 years or so. So we focus really on that OT space, the most critical space. And now when we see businesses, they are required to purchase cyber insurance, cyber bodily harm, business disruption insurance, and things like that. Cybersecurity has a huge component to that. But we also work in the human security and the physical security realm as well. And there sometimes can be very little separation between cybersecurity and physical security. So in those OT assets, if someone's attacking the system remotely via cyber mechanism, that's sort of one threat vector, but they also may be outside with weapons. They may be trying to breach the perimeter. They may be trying to get access to the digital assets that are on the site. So physical security, surveillance, ingress, egress control, ballistic detection, all that is very important. And then human security is really, training and making sure you're vetting employees, making sure you're protecting employees. So really those three things are very intertwined right now when we look at the operational and energy space. So that's what we do.
And Everline is really grouping all these capabilities in one organization today.
Yes, yes. So we have three segments to Everline: advise, connect, and secure. The third segment, secure, is all three of those things, cyber, physical, and human security. If you don't address them together, you could have a pretty, an open hole, a gap in your operations that introduces too much risk into your organization. So we try to approach that holistically. And we do that whether it's policies and procedures, whether it's technology, or whether it's human. That's the same as IT, right?
Let's pivot a little bit and talk about kind of marketing challenges. You mentioned that energy security has historically been kind of a referral-driven kind of business. What limitation does that create when you try to actually grow more intentionally?
Yeah, that's a great question. And you really have to establish trust and relationships with the customer. Oftentimes, we see the most critical information at a customer. We see their weaknesses, and they have to trust you before they're willing to discuss those with you. They also need to know that they can count on you in times of crisis. And I think that's why many of our customers are with us a very long time, 10, 12 years, because we have formed those relationships with them. And they know that they can call, they know us each individually, and they can call and have an open conversation about risk. It can be challenging with marketing. We don't get as many customers if we say, go to the trade show and put up a booth. We get some that way, but many times an operator, when they're in a situation, they need something or they're in time of crisis, they're actually going to call up a colleague at a neighboring company or someone they know and say, who are you using? And that's how we get the majority of our work is just through referral basis. So
And the name Everline compared to the legacy companies, is it well known at the moment?
it is now. I think it was new, 5 years ago, and that can be a challenge to get your name out there. But a lot of folks in the industry knew the individual company names that made up Everline because we were all around for a while. I think what differentiates Everline from some of the larger companies, the IBMs and the larger entities that you would automatically think of, is that we are solely OT focused. We don't have a lot of competition in the fact that we stay in the OT lane. There's many IT security operators out there, many to choose from, but not so many on the OT side.
So you're emphasizing kind of the need to be seen as a security advisor, like building trust, not just a vendor. So what makes that positioning kind of shift hard for companies in this space?
One challenge that we have, and we are always trying to figure out how to better and refine this, is many customers come to us, they don't know what they need. So we're trying to say, here's the problem, and let us help you navigate what the solution can be. They're used to, with the larger entities, looking at a menu of services. Oh, this is what I'm going to get. One, two, three. But you have to know what you need. And many customers come to us and say, I'm trying to understand the regulation. I'm trying to understand how it applies to me. What is my threat space? What do I need to do here? And their cost control is huge, right? So they want to find a vendor that they can trust, and they'll sit down with them and go, let's define the problem, let's define the mitigation, and what does it really make sense for you to spend your dollars on? And not just say, well, here's our package offerings and pick one, you know. So
Yeah.
that kind of bespoke is often the tipping point for them, when they say, okay, I understand this is a solution for me and I'm not paying for more than I need. So
So we are now kind of post-acquisition. So you sold your organization to private equity. Tell me about the experience.
I think the initial sale of Ardua, of my company, it was very smooth. I didn't know what to expect, but I spoke to a lot of colleagues, tried to get as much sort of just perspective as I could leaning into it. But I had established a very good relationship with the individuals associated with Line Star and felt very confident about that. We had great open communication, and that was a very smooth sale. I agreed to stay on for about 2 years because a lot of folks told me, "Make sure you have an exit ramp, it can get very strange, you don't know what to expect." And so I did that, but I'm still here, and that was because we've had a lot of fun, and we've, had some great experiences and some great growth. And last year, we sold EverLine again. We sold it to Cogenuity, a private equity firm, and that's been a similar experience. Great communication, getting to know the team members one-on-one, and I think that's a real recipe for success, is if you don't get to see those folks and interact with them. It was very important to them and very important to us that we got to know them personally and established a great level of mutual trust, and it's been a very good experience. And I think, at least in my initial sale, I really wasn't shopping for a buyer, and kind of let that unfold naturally. And we had several companies approach us, but I tried to look for the right fit for us. I tried to look for an entity that was going to be a good home for our team, was going to give us an opportunity to grow. And in my case, Everline was firmly rooted in that OT space. And so that was a home for us. Cogenuity is as well. Cogenuity is very focused on industrial control and operation. And so they're very niche, and that is a good home for us in general.
Okay. And so after rolling up 7 companies into one, I mean, what has been harder than expected? What have been the key challenging? Was it more on the people size, the processes, sales, marketing operations?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think you can envision it like if you had 7 roommates and you wanted to all try to live in, and you're all very established and you're all going to move in together in this house. What would be a challenge? There were many standard processes, admin processes that took a lot of time to streamline. And we kind of had to figure out what was working and what wasn't working. And the time involved in doing that, you can't underestimate. And so there was probably many cases, I would think, where all of us looked at each other and said, it would have been easier to build a new house from scratch than try to put everybody, in this one house. But it worked out, and it did take a little bit of time, but it worked out. And you just have to go into it knowing it's going to take some time. It's going to take a little bit of effort and decision making and good communication across the team. So we still find things to this day that are a case where we need to make a decision, whose process are we going to follow, basically. In our case, many of our customers are using 2 or more of our service lines. And so we still work carefully to try to figure out the best way to cross-sell those services, making sure that our existing customers are aware of everything that's available to them and the efficiencies that they can gain. And so that's the fact that an asset owner can come and get everything they need is a really big positive for Everline. That's one of our strongest attributes. And so we're constantly trying to refine how we market those capabilities and get to the right buyer at each entity.
So you're mentioning, getting the scope of your services increasing. In my experience, we work a lot with private equity led kind of organization that grow kind of quickly, and we are kind of in that space of assisting with kind of the integration, sales, marketing. The one element we did find in organization like yours, where you try to build trust, is often the organization, the people actually running some of those service lines don't really understand what the other service lines are doing, and it makes a little bit of a challenge on the cross and upselling aspect. Have you had this type of challenges?
Yeah, it is a challenge when you've got 1,000 different capabilities and you're bringing everyone together and they need to understand that. We have some pretty significant training capabilities. We'll have training days and things like that so that folks are aware of what other teams are doing, and as well as just getting an opportunity to engage with the other staff members. But you have to make, to your point, you have to make a conscious effort on that, or else you won't be able to speak effectively to the customer about everything that you can do. So we are a fairly small organization in that we have about 200 employees. So that's easier to do when you have 200 and not 200,000 or 20,000. Where you would, getting something like an interactive training event is more of a challenge. But that, for us, that's something that we are constantly working on.
And so is it something that you do in internal training, sales training? Do you develop kind of a sales playbook? How do you get this internal sales force kind of confident with your overall services?
Yeah, we just went through a really big strategic planning season to do just that. Really refine the business development processes and make sure we have the right people mapped to the right segments who can speak effectively to those. But I think that there is a lot of thought that has to go into that. If you just proceed along like, I'm just going to go sell what I need to sell and I'll let the other segment sell what they need to sell, you really miss out on a lot of opportunities. And so I think it's just slowing down and saying, who do I need to talk to? Who can I engage with? And then our business development team is constantly growing and changing and trying to refine the target markets that they're focusing on. But it is a constant effort to do that.
You mentioned trade shows. You mentioned for some type of marketing activities. Can you describe a little bit what's your ecosystem as far as the use of digital and more traditional means to attract customers?
Yeah, that's actually changing a little bit. And I think it's just a sign of the market. In the last 2 years or so, conference attendance has been way down. People don't wanna travel, they don't wanna spend the travel dollars and things like that. So, I think we've seen much more return on investment, when we hit the digital space and social media, and we do have several on-site events each year where our customers can come in for a full day and, get some training and get some awareness, and that's been very effective. But there was a day, I think, where we would go to, dozens of trade shows, dozens of conferences and things like that, and the return just isn't there as much. And I hear that from all my colleagues in the space. Well, I think we're all really busy as executives too. And so things like podcasts, small social media snippets, people can take 15, 20 minutes and listen to that, but probably not 3 days and $3,000 to go to a conference. So I think we're trying to constantly increase our digital footprint through blogs and videos and interviews and things like that, and a lot of publications, digital publications.
So you're doing quite a bit of public relation, trying to get more of those earned media into your.
We are trying to do that because it just feels like it's become much more effective than the trade shows.
I mean, that we've seen that quite a bit. I mean, it's we always say that trade shows are the place where salespeople go to party. But so you've seen quite a bit of a digital push the last few years on your end.
We have, and I know we're not alone because I hear that from many of my colleagues as well, it's just an easier way to reach targeted audiences. And then we do a lot of work with industry forums like gas associations and things like that. And if we can have a digital product that we can engage with every member of that forum, it allows us to reach, hundreds of strategic partners and customers and everyone in the supply chain without attending conferences and things like that. So yeah, just the return and the reach has been better from the digital side, way more in the last year, I would say.
And do you see more usage of social media internally, kind of on your corporate accounts and on individual accounts as well?
We do. We have a pretty detailed, information and social media policy because we're, very careful. Obviously, the customer information that we have is regulated and so forth. So we can't do publish a lot of case studies and things like that. That keeps us we have a little bit quiet. We have to figure out how we can market our services and describe what we do without revealing too much about our customers and their situation. And so that can be a little bit challenging. I'm almost envious when I see fabulous case studies and partnerships and things like that advertised on social media because we really just can't do that in the space that we work. But we see a pretty big uptick in our own activity as well as like members of our team and things like that engaging on social media. And I'm always amazed, at least in the last year, at how our individual team members are getting followers and a lot of reach outs in social media and things like that, that I just didn't realize they were getting that kind of individual attention. So what that tells us is people are watching. And even when an individual team member makes a statement, publishes a paper or something like that, it's getting a lot of traction, even outside our corporate social media.
Yeah, we see more and more supporting organizations like yours that the actual individual social media activities may be a lot get much more result than the corporate one, because at the end, social media is really kind of individual driven, right?
Exactly.
So we're talking about digital. I mean, one element in many industry with sales is kind of the CRM space. I heard you're kind of a Salesforce kind of a shop. How did you manage the kind of the integration and how would you rate kind of the current use of your CRM and how important it is in your organization?
It's becoming increasingly important. I think we were barely using it at first because it does take some time to learn it and to understand its capabilities. But I think we found ourselves more in the fast lane with that. And as the company grows, we can't live without a lot of those tools, or else opportunities will get missed. And it's just we realized pretty quickly a couple of years ago we were going to have to get organized and use that. And so our business development team manages a lot of those tools and is always looking ahead at what's next.
And so from an organizational standpoint, in terms of, the structure, you have a head of marketing, a head of sales. How is it structured to kind of align kind of your branding activities with your marketing activities and sales activities?
Yeah, we have a business development team, and those folks each have kind of their areas of specialty and that they focus on. And that's really around specific market segments. And the goal is really for every business development team member to be able to speak to everything that the company can do. And then we engage various marketing firms for what we need. We have a great marketing firm that does a lot of our, print and social media and digital interactions and things like that. And so we do have a product. We have our SP3 product as well as our service line. And so we need to approach those things differently. Obviously, products and services don't always sell in the same basket or to the same folks. And so we try to think about the best way to market those things. And I think one thing that's evident, and I'm a technology person by trade. I'm a computer scientist. I'm not in a business person per se, but realize that things get stagnant very quickly. And you have to constantly be looking at a better way to do things and what's the technology available to us and what's out there. I think one easy pitfall for a lot of organizations like ours and like mine, even before I sold, was you get comfortable with the way you do things. But then you miss out on opportunities if you aren't really aggressive and looking at ahead and looking at the tools available to you.
And so in terms of tools, okay, so you have a much more stringent kind of use of the CRM. If we move into kind of the AI space, how are you guys optimizing AI in general today in your business? But most focus on kind of what you're doing in your kind of marketing and sales activity. Do you have some initiatives that you're doing on that space with AI?
We do. We have some initiatives in how we use certain AI tools to address target markets and things like that. And that's very useful. We are in kind of a interesting space in our ability to use AI to do our daily security work because most operational environments are in a closed network environment. Then you can't have AI, reaching out and phoning home using the broader open AI framework. And so in security specifically, to conduct our day-to-day work, we utilize AI where the AI algorithm can learn in a bubble. And that is worked well for us. And I think that's different and in how we approach that to say our business and marketing functions where we're always kind of looking at increased AI capability, whether it's Copilot or, ChatGPT or all these other tools out there. We began with a very stringent AI policy and started to loosen that and refine that as we needed. But we're going to get to a point where we can't operate without AI. These basic things it'll be a requirement.
Do you have any type of on-premise LLM or because
In
I
a
know there's a
way,
big Mhm.
yeah, in a way, on our OT side, we do. And I've looked into, the different rags, the different possibilities for us to use in an operational setting because many of our customers are evaluating the same things. They're trying to figure out how can I leverage AI in a closed environment that works for me. But we're not to a point on our business side and our marketing side yet where we've invoked our own LLM. I wouldn't be surprised if that came in the future.
So to get back on the use of AI for marketing and sales, what are you guys doing at the moment?
One of the things that I know one of our team members did that's been really successful is being able to distill down a list of potential customers and targets that have specific assets. And if those assets are newly regulated or have had recent threats against them, that allows us to refine a target audience and then be able to really clearly define the solution that we're proposing to them. So AI helps us do that. I mean, that would be hours of research and digging by a person that AI can do really quickly. So that's just one example of finding the target audience in very detailed ways using AI to do that.
And that's something that your biz dev team is implementing at scale, or you're more in the pilot phase, I guess.
Yeah, we're at the higher phase, but I think that if it continues to work the way we think, it could have a broader implication across the organization, and then maybe it just becomes our standard approach.
Yeah, we've seen quite a bit of that. Kind of to develop and segment and be able to actually very efficiently reach your ICP, your ideal customer. I mean, that's been kind of a strong, kind of one of us strong initiative we put internally and externally for our clients, and that's true. On a little bit more down the funnel, I mean, at the proposal level, any strong use of AI for accelerating RFPs or making them more consistent? How is it working on your end?
We've actually discussed that as recently as just a few weeks ago, and I think that will be in our plan for 2026. That's in our strategic plan and looking of ways to synchronize that, right? I think and I see everybody struggling with it. There's probably a faster way to answer bids, to put together material, and especially when a lot of that material is rinse and repeat, it just makes sense to use AI in those cases. But we have a general rule that even if AI is putting together part of that document for you, a human has to review the whole thing. In our case, we can never lose the human element of that, and that's really what our customers are waiting on. So I think there's a right way to use AI for us, and we just need to be cognizant of what that is and pivot as necessary.
We see quite a bit of that in our space as well, and we have implemented a few kind of automated kind of agents for kind of all this repetitive task. I mean, we were in some situation when you were looking at three proposals, and things as basic as the team were
Right.
inconsistent. So I mean,
Right.
those are easy to fix, right?
Exactly.
Um, you mentioned talent and issues getting talent. So how do you find talent? How do you hire them? How to make sure you can actually scale it, get the right one?
Yeah. That's a challenge. I know it's a challenge across the board. I think finding great talent in a market that's very aggressive, especially ours, solid security staff that have OT operational experience, those people come at a premium cost. So you want to make the right decision. You want someone to be in for the long haul. We see, many of the new hires staying just this is just industry wide. They'll stay a very short period of time and barely completed the ramp up before they're on to the next position. And so we're always looking for ways to keep and retain talent, give them a path to success and a path to growth here so that they feel like they're really, coming in with a lot of opportunity and runway ahead of them. But how we find stuff, social media certainly, and like LinkedIn and Indeed, and those are our HR team uses some executive recruiters when necessary. But we did run into situations where if we were looking for very technical talent, we would go through a recruiting firm. Those people would stay just long enough that we paid the firm, and then they were gone. And so I think that's a challenge. I hear that from all my colleagues in the industry. How do you find the right folks and retain that talent? So if we know it's going to take a couple months to get talent. We are, that's a reality we have to accept, and we may not get the folks that we want. We're going to have to leverage technology as much as possible. And so we're always looking at ways where we can leverage things like AI to get some efficiencies with our current staff if we might be running lean until we can find the right people. But I wish I knew what the ace in the hole was to find the right folks. We're all struggling in the market.
Are you embedding workforce within your client space, or the people you're hiring are solely working for the organization in office?
We have a few contract individuals that are very specialized, have very specialized skills. For the most part, though, we like to get folks full-time in-house to be part of a longer-term team. I think it's just in the operational space, having that trust in the team and a working history together is really important.
Yeah, I mean, this is. I mean, I know in your space it is. In the safety space, it's very hard to find individuals. We get challenged when you have a turnaround, or and you need to have hundreds of people available within at all level. It's been we've seen that a lot of our marketing activities they move from actually dimension to actually finding the right talent. And from hearing you, it looks like you have the same issue.
Exactly. There's very little difference between the safety and the security space in operations, very similar. So you're bridging technology with also field work and operations, and that environment can't be taken lightly when you're looking for the right team members.
Yeah, no, we see that quite a bit. We have a few clients in the safety space. I mean, and they all have some challenges on that end. So, I mean, I think we're getting close to. And thank you again for all that great information you give us. It looks to me that you have now two experiences, kind of a selling organization to some type of a private equity type, and it seems to be doing well without too much pressure. If you have kind of to close on, and you want to advise kind of another company that is selling to private equity, what to look for, and what are the experience, what would be kind of your
Yeah.
your advice?
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. I think it's really important to think about your core values, your core capabilities, and find an equity firm that is actively shopping for those and that you're a good fit in their portfolio. I think it's really beneficial when the other portfolio companies can add to your services and vice versa, and you all really get on the same page. I think communication is key. Communication of short and long term goals on both sides are key. Really, just building those relationships and that level of trust is important. I think that's what makes a sale go smoothly. And then there's not a lot of surprises once you start working together. You know what you're working towards. That's really important. I think I've heard folks say, they were dealing with private equity and they only saw one person or they only met one or two people. No, you got to meet the whole team. You got to know what makes them tick and what motivates them. And then if it aligns with your motivations, it will be a success. So yeah, I didn't set out to go through, 2 sales like that, but here I am and had 2 positive experiences. I'm really grateful for that.
And are they imposing more control or reporting that you had to adapt to?
I think it's just different. I think, but this private equity firm is very engaged with us. Happy to sit down at a table, roll up sleeves, and get to work. And I know our team likes that. We like that level of engagement, and I think that's a recipe for success. So it's just a little different this time around. But I know our private equity firm is very engaged, very interested in just the operations on a day to day basis, and that can be very rewarding to a team that's worked really hard to build something and they see a buyer that we're not just another portfolio company. We're an active part of their organization, and that's great.
Well, great. I mean, thank you very much, Annie. I mean, kind of as a just to close, if you can give us a 30-second ending statement of where people in oil and gas or other organizations that have a security problem where they can find EverLine and kind of working and finding the right partner.
Yeah, thanks for that opportunity. I think my advice is know that threats are not going away and your target. And I think it's really important to know that and to actively work to reduce your risk. We're also in a day and time where everybody who does business with you, everyone in your supply chain has an anticipation that your security is equal to theirs or better. Insurers expect that, regulators expect that, customers expect that. And so just like safety, security has to be ingrained in everything that you do. And don't go it alone. There's a lot of us out there who work specifically in that space and can get solutions for you in an efficient manner and get a lot of information for you that you would spend a lot of time working on your own. Just seek help. It's the exact reason why I don't do my own taxes. There are experts who do that. Let us help you. And so you can find us at everlineus.com. We're also on LinkedIn, and so am I, as well as my team. You can reach out to anyone if you just like to have a confidential conversation about your security situation and what you might need. So thanks for giving us a chance to do that.
Well, thank you very much again, Annie, and we'll talk soon, okay?
Okay. Thank you. You have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Annie, thanks so much for the conversation. I really appreciate your sharing what it actually looks like to scale in a high-trust, high-risk industry. And thanks to everyone listening to the HEX-Files. If you're curious how your organization stacks up across strategy, marketing, sales, and technology, you can take our growth optimization survey at hexagroup.com/podcast. It's a quick way to spot gaps and opportunities. Until next time, fear no more. The truth is out there.